I can't get over me telling you my story. It's a Faron Young autobiography. How the hell do you pronounce that? You mean it's a Faron Young autobiography?
That's right.
I'm the center of attention in this barroom. I don't care, 'cause I'll be back to wind me up again.
Yes, this is a Faron Young audio biography.
Once upon a time down in Shreveport, Louisiana, there was a man named Harlan, a lady named Doris. His name was Harlan Young. Her name was Doris Birch. And they met and married. And they had 6 children. They had 2 girls and 4 boys. And lo and behold, I was the baby of the family. And my mother was about 5'5", brown-eyed, black-head. My daddy was about 6'4", blonde-headed and blue-eyed, a great big Yankee Irishman from Des Moines, Iowa. My mother was from Louisiana. Well, lo and behold, all my brothers and sisters looked like my father. They were blonde-headed and blue-eyed. And I took after my mama, a little brown-eyed, little short, black-headed kid. I never will forget. It was a rough life for me because all my brothers and sisters used to say, you know, you don't belong to this family. Look at yourself. You don't look like any of us. And I'd start crying. I'd run to, Mama, they tell me that I don't belong to the family. Mama said, you kids better leave that little baby alone. I'm going to whip every one of you. I'm telling you right now, you better leave that kid alone. And my daddy always had a look in his eye when he looked around at all the kids sitting at the table. I don't know if he ever believed I was his till the day he died, because I didn't look nothing like it. But it was a crazy situation.
This is the story of a yellow bandana, mounted his pony, and rode off to war.
Faron Young.
He gave Rosetta his
Yellow bandana. There's just one of almost 100 top 10 records from Faron Young. Boy, it's good to have you here telling your life story. Did you ever do this before?
No way. I remember my dad put me in seminary college, and I quit to go on the Louisiana hayride. He said, "You will never amount to a hill of beans." That was his favorite saying. You'll never amount to a hill of beans. He said, I remember back in the Depression, all them damn musicians standing in line to get food. And I said, well, you must have been standing in line, too, if you saw all that. With that, he hit me upside the head. I turned about 3 flips. My brothers and sisters could not raise static up on the radio. Okay. And I don't know where it came from, how I got into this. But my first grade in grammar school, I was the star of the show. I played Yankee Doodle Dandy. And I was Yankee Doodle Dandy. I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy. And it's a grand old flag. And for all my years in school, I always was the star of the musical, all the way through my senior high school. But once upon a time, there was a little boy named Faron Young born, and I've seen everything. I remember before I went to school, or maybe right after that, I wanted to be a sports announcer. I used to sit out behind the old farmhouse with a tin can, and back then they had a team in Shreveport called the Shreveport Sports, and I'd listen to it on the radio, and I'd go out behind the house. I said, "If there wasn't, here come a fella up to bat. Pap, there goes the ball to going over the center field fence." And I would make up all this in my mind. I'd sit out there for hours on time making up football and baseball games and like, kidding. Wanted to be a sports announcer. In fact, when I went to KWKH, I used to always go in the old studios at KWKH, and I would tear off the UP wire press that came in on typewriters. I'd carry that. I'd go in the studio by myself. And act like the microphone was on, I'd read it. Okay. And today in Germany, you know, I'd rattle this stuff off because I want to be a sports announcer or a newscaster.
Faron Young, an audio biography, rated PG, for colorful language.
Well, how can you howl the unmitigated gall? Let me live.
Me telling my own story? It's Faron Young.
You bet.
An audio biography? Hey, I like that.
That's good, Faron. You got it. Now tell me about the first job you ever had. I mean, really, the first job you ever had.
The first time I really had a job, because we used to go out and work when I was like a senior in high school, and my coach, football coach, and us, we had a little band, and we'd go out and play some of the better clubs. We were scared to go into to the skull arches, as we call them back then. They used to go in there, they're frisky, you know, and they'd say, "You got a gun on you?" And said, "No." They said, "Do you want one?" So it was pretty rough, some place. We played for the kiddies. The skull arches where the motorcycle boys pull up back then, and the oil field workers, and they'd come in there with good intentions of having a few beers and a good time and playing some pool. They'd get about 3 or 4 highballs on them, and the ship hit the sand, in other words. That'd be the damnedest fight you ever saw. I used to play some of the clubs later on down South Louisiana where that would happen. They put chicken wire around the stage because they started throwing bottles at each other. Some old long necks, you know.
I know how it feels to be alive with no desire to live.
Faron Young, an audio biography. This is Biff Collie listening to the story of one of country music's most colorful and most successful 32 #1 hits of all the artists we've heard. Faron?
I went to school with Teddy Wilburn, with the Wilburn brothers, and I met Doyle. So one time Doyle told me, he said, "Why don't you come up some morning?" They had an early morning radio show at KWK's and do a song with us. So I showed up there one Thursday morning or something, and after I got through milking the cows and all, I got up there before the show was over with. And Teddy said, "What are you doing up here, Faron?" I said, "I'm up here to sing a song." He said, "Well, just who told you that you could come up here and sing a song?" I said, "Well, Doyle told me." He said, "Well, Doyle doesn't control this show." So I went to Doyle, and I said, "Well, Doyle, I guess I might as well leave." And I had my little old bitty pickup truck with me. And I said, he said, "Well," I said, "Teddy told me I couldn't be on it." He said, "Don't you listen to Teddy. I'm the one that runs this show." And I will forget, and they put me on the show. And I got to sing.
You sang while the Wilburn brothers fought, was it?
Well, they didn't fight. It was Teddy and Doyle, Lester and Leslie. But when Teddy and I went to school together, you know, we'd take our guitars in choir class, we'd play, and all the girls would sit around and listen to us sing. And Teddy at the time was, you know, Teddy started when he was like 4 years old, so he was a better guitar player than I. And he didn't sing any better than I did, but he was more professional than I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he used to shake his head when I'd sing. He'd shake his head back and forth. No, 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 no. Mm-hmm. And I said, "What the hell do you keep shaking your head for, Teddy?" He said, "Well," he said, "Faron, you just don't have what it takes to make it in this business." I said, "Well, how do you know so much about that?" He said, "Well, Faron, I've been doing this since I've been 4 years old. And here we are, 16, and I know everything."
Yeah.
So what was funny, I went with Webb Pierce and worked with him and Floyd Kramer and all this stuff, and then I got my job at the Opry. And they came up to the Opry, and I hired them. Teddy played bass, and Doyle played electric guitar for me. And one time we were going down the road a couple of years later, a big Cadillac limousine I'd bought and owed for. And I had my name on the back of it. It said, "Faron Young, Grand Ole Opry." And Teddy said, "I think you ought to put me and Doyle's name on this car somewhere." I said, "You know, that's right." And Hubert Long, you remember Hubert used to be our manager? He was with us. He used to drive all the time. I said, "Hubert, the next service station you come into, pull in and get a spray can and put Teddy's name on one back wheel and Doyle's name on the other back wheel." He said, "Well, no one can read that." I said, "It doesn't matter. They're big wheels, so I want their name on the wheel." So I told Teddy, I said, "You remember when you used to shake your head at me and tell me I'd never make it?" I said, "How does it feel that now you're working for me?"
For this failure.
Yeah. And he said, "We don't work for you. We work for Hubert Long." And I said, "Is that right?" I said, "Hubert, do these guys work for you?" He said, "Boys, I'm going to tell y'all something. I work for him. So he's the man that makes the money and pays us all." And Teddy went, "Ha, ha, ha, can't you take a joke?" Because I had him cornered. Now, let me finish this now. I love Teddy Wilburn, and I love Doyle Wilburn. They were my best friends, but this was young punk talk happening.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't swap my love for Teddy and Doyle and the great thing, the love we have. In fact, I was with Teddy just the other day, and I love him to death. So I'm just telling you a funny story happened.
Well, I've been a working hard the whole week long, and I'm I'm gonna have some wine, women, and song. I gotta work next week, but that's all right. I got $5 and it's Saturday night.
I shall return, but first, let's take a break. Right in the middle of Fur and Young, an audio biography.
I'm living in a wonderful world of women. I wanna go that way.
Wow, I never thought I'd be sitting here telling my life story. No way. That's what I'm doing. This is Fur and Young and autobiography.
Audio
Biography. Is that anything like a lobotomy?
Talk about school, Faron.
I was started over Centenary College, and I'd go down to Kevin and I saw Tillman Franks, and I said, I write, too. I write songs. So I had a bunch of songs. He said, well, go over and see Webb Pierce. At that time, Webb had just quit working for Sears and Roebuck. He was selling shirts at Sears and Roebuck. And I went over, and it took me an hour to find his house because he lived behind a home. He lived in a garage apartment, probably paying, $18, $20 a month for it back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I went up. I remember Webb said, well, come on in, son. Said, what are you doing? I said, well, Mr. Pierce, I had some songs I wrote I'd like you to hear. He said, well, sit down there, son, and sing them for me. And I sang him the songs, and I got through. He said, well, son, I got a little information to give you. He said, you sing a hell of a lot better than you can write.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he said, and Webb had a club out in Bossier City called the Skyway Club. He said, why don't you come out there tomorrow night, son, and sing a few songs with us? So I went out that night, and I got up and sang. Got through, and Webb said, you did a heck of a job, son, and give me $5.
Really?
I said, geez, $5, you know? So I said, I'll be back tomorrow night. He said, all right, son, come on back tomorrow night. So I was out there the next day early. I got ready to sing, and he said, well, by the time you go out there and sing a few, son, I said, you going to give me my $5, ain't you? He said, oh, no, son, we don't need you tonight. Can't pay you no $5. If you want to sing, sing. And I said, well, if you ain't going to pay me, I ain't going to sing nothing. I ain't going to sing a note. He said, well, we won't need you tonight. And I said, okay, Mr. Pierce, I'll wait till you need me. So I waited about an hour, and Webb got tired of singing, had one too many. Finally came over and said, okay, get up there and sing. Here's your $5. So I got up and sang again. I got I never would sing for him again unless he gave me $5.
No kidding.
So he hired me for $35 a week.
Mm.
And Floyd Crane was working for him for $35 a week. Jimmy Day, one of the great steel guitar players at the time. But Webb got me on the hayride, and the hayride paid $26 on a Saturday night. That was scaled. And went in and did the hayride, and then we'd have to work 6 nights for Webb for $6. We got the time. See, the hayride paid us $20. He counted that as part of the $35 pay.
Really?
Yeah. Said him giving us $35 and us making the other $26. That didn't work.
Uh-huh.
It cost him $6 a week to hire us.
No kidding.
I was there close to a year, Biff, and Ken Nelson, who was the A&R man for Capitol Records, was over in Dallas, Texas. KWK's was a big station. He heard me on there singing, and he came over a couple of days later and wanted to find out where's this new kid, Fur and Young. Nobody ever heard of me.
So many times I've told you I was leaving, then leaving and saying goodbye.
30 minutes down and an hour and a half to go on my audio biography.
Whoa. Okay, take a break, Faron. We'll be right back.
This is Fur and Young.
And this is Biff Collie. Welcome to Faron Young, an audio biography.
3 days that I dread to steal right. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
3 days. Hit. One after the other. The 32 number one hits. Faron Young, the young sheriff, and now the singing sheriff. As Ed Hamilton says, the aging lawman. How do you like that, Faron? Well, let's go back to when you were a young boy and Ken Nelson was searching for a young man named, or a young voice named Faron Young.
And he found Horace Logan, who was the manager and the head of the Louisiana Hayride then. And Hart said, yes, we have that young boy here. Have a long contract with him. I didn't have no damn contract with him. And said, we can set it up with y'all for 50%. We own him, and we'll let y'all have part of our 50%.
Okay.
And they went to Tillman. Tillman, all of them are going to milk me.
Yeah, sure.
So finally, Ken found me. Somehow he found me. He said, son, I need to talk to you. He said, these people up here are trying to, rob you. And I was like 19 years old. You had to be 21 years old to sign a contract then. Still do. I said, well, I can't sign it. I said, but they're lying to you, Sir, I said, I'm not under contract. I've never signed anything in my life to anybody. He said, well, could you let me meet your mother and father? So I took him out on the old Jefferson Road where Mom and Dad was. He talked to them and told them who he was with Capitol Records. And he had a contract. And Mom and Daddy signed for me to sign with Capitol Records. Or otherwise, I'd have been give 50% of all my money to Tillman, the Webb, and Horace Logan. Tillman was managing Webb at the time. And as soon as I got this contract signed, I put out a record called Haven't Waited Too Long and Tattletale Tears. Well, somebody in Nashville heard it. In fact, it was Hugh Cherry. Hugh Cherry carried over to Jim Denny and Jack Stapp at Grand Ole Opry, said, this is a new kid that could make it. And they called me up and said, we want to give you a 2-week trial in Nashville. So I got all my clothes, what little bit I had, and put them in an Alabama cardboard suitcase. I came up here, And I remember Tillman was really bitter. He said, Tillman talked with kind of a lisp. He said, you're through, you'll never make it. You went to that Grand Ole Opry, you're through, I'll see you out of the business. Goodness gracious, Faron. Webb said, now Tillman, leave the boy alone. He's got a break. Tillman, my boy, let the little boy go up there and try it. Said, let the boy see if he's got what it takes to make it like the Webster does.
Oh, I miss you already, and you're not even home.
I'd like to tell you about Elvis, Johnny Cash, Hank Williams, Johnny Horton, when we come back to Faron Young, an audio biography.
Step aside if I step out of line.
Step aside.
Step aside if I step out of line.
That song written by Ray Grip, one of Faron Young's inspirations, as a matter of fact. Faron Young, an audio biography. We were telling our story about the time that Hugh Cherry told Jack Stapp, who was program director at WSM, and Jim Denny, who was manager of the Grand Ole Opry, about Faron Young. They asked you to come for a 2-week trial, and what happened?
Well, I came up here and stayed 12 years with the Grand Ole Opry.
Now,
A couple of years later, Webb came up and joined up.
So you came to Nashville first.
Right.
Who was at the hayride while you were singing on hayride? You remember?
Of Slim Whitman and Webb Pierce. Red Savine, and then Jimmy and Johnny and a bunch of people that never amounted to anything from that time.
You first went to, on the hayride of what year was it? You remember?
It was 1951.
51. So Hank was gone. Hank Williams had been there and gone.
Hank had left to come here. I went down once and saw Hank in 1949. I went down to hayride to see him because he had Lovesick Blues out. And my football coach that had the little band together said, you ought to listen to this guy. So I wasn't into country music that heavy. I was a pop singer. I did Nat King Cole, Frank Sinatra, Patti Page. So I went to saw him, and he encored like 11 times singing Lovesick Blues. I said, gee whiz, that's amazing.
Scary.
And I got into country music more with my coach because I was still in high school in the 50, 51 when I graduated. But we'd go out and work clubs, and people would come up and say, sing Walking the Floor with you, and they'd put $1 in it. And it made me think, because when I was singing pop, people would come up in those pop clubs and say, They'd say, sing the nearness of you and old black magic, and they'd give you a quarter. I figured, wait a minute, now these hillbillies are the ones that got the money. That's who I'm going to listen to.
Aha.
So I got real interested in country music real quick. I said, heck, there's a heck of a lot more money over there.
Isn't that
So I
something?
just,
Strictly a matter of economics.
yeah, it really was to me. And yet I still sing pop, I still sing country, and I love both of them. But it was the money.
All right, so now you know where the money is. There's gold in them our hillbillies, isn't there, Faron Young?
You know, yeah, but I also want to tell you about Faron Young, the movie star.
Okay, you get ready to tell about Faron Young, the movie star, and we'll take a break. Welcome back to Biff Collie and Faron Young, an audio biography. Well, you having fun?
Oh, yeah, this is great.
Here I am in Dallas. Where in the hell are you? Here I am in Dallas. Where in the hell are you?
This program is rated PG for colorful language. This is Faron Young, an audio biography. You came to Nashville for a trial, a 2-week trial, and you stayed for 12 years on the Opry. Talk about something happened. One of the first things that happened when you got on the air at WSN.
When I came up here for that trial, they put me on a 5:15 in the morning radio show. And I did it, and the 2 weeks went by, and they didn't tell me I was through. And they put me on the Grand Ole Opry on Saturday nights. But no one ever said, okay, it's over with. And I didn't dare go ask the powers to be, you know, am I through yet? 'Cause, I mean, what the hell, you don't say nothing if it's still working.
Yeah.
And I did that show for a year and a half. I remember one time I was doing the early morning show, and I thought, ain't nobody listening to this show at no 5:15 in the morning. So one morning I smarted off. I said, anybody would like to have a picture of yours truly, Faron Young, just drop me a card or letter to WSM, and I'll send you a free picture. Well, about 2 days later, I came up with my show, and there was boxes and baskets of mail lying down the hall.
Kidding.
And I asked someone, I said, you must be running a contest. And the guy said, there ain't no contest. He said, that's your mail. And there was like 6,000 or 7,000 letters.
Gee, man. Had your name on it.
Yeah, for Faron Young wanting that free picture. Well, I went out and got a picture made on a postcard. Postcard size picture. And back then you could mail a postcard for like a penny, 2 cents.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have over 4 cents in the whole thing. But I sent everybody a picture they'd written me.
I was the world's champion lover to my baby. That'll be my comeback. She'll kiss me and then this happened.
Well, we're halfway through. You know, halfway through my life, Bill. Hello, you beautiful people, and welcome back to hour number 2 of Faron Young audio biography.
Well, me and my baby, we're going steady. 'Cause you're my baby, you're going steady with me.
When I was a kid living on the farm, I used to walk 4 miles down a gravel road to see the movies to Cedar Grove, Louisiana. And I remember outside of Gene Autry and Tex Ritter, my favorites were Alan Ladd and Veronica Lake.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one time writing Alan Ladd for a picture. And I thought, well, it'll be here tomorrow. You know, we lived out on a rural route, so I mailed it. Next day I went to the mailbox. Well, it wasn't there. And I went down to the mailbox for 30 days, and the picture wasn't there.
No kidding.
But I didn't realize, you know, back in those days, how slow the postage was. Probably 4 months later, here came a postcard-sized picture.
Mm-hmm.
Said, sincerely, Alan Ladd. Didn't say to Faron Young or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I said, God, I was the happiest guy in the world. I put it in my pocket. I carried it to school. And I said, look here. I said, Alan Ladd's one of my personal friends. He sent me this picture right here. I mean, I fired a secretary over this one time because I meet people from time to time on airplanes, even till today. In fact, the other day I sent out about 5 pictures. But I would meet people and I said, would you send a picture to my sister-in-law in Abilene, Texas. I said, yeah, give me the address. I would always mail those. But I got into a habit where there was so many of them coming to me that I'd tell the secretary, and she could sign my name just like me. And so I would run into these people maybe 6 months later, and I said, we never got that picture you promised us. And I went to the secretary, and I thought about Alan Ladd. He finally sent it, how much it hurt me, and I fired her. I said, you can't handle this, and you work, I'm paying you a salary. But today, when people write me, it costs me anywhere from $4,000 to $8,000 a year now to mail out pictures.
Is that a fact?
When people write me, they don't send you the postage. They don't realize it costs you about $2 to do it.
Right.
But you send out a 5-colored picture. There's 5 colors on it. Then the envelopes, the big 8x10 envelope, and then a piece of cardboard, and 50 cents postage. And I hand sign everything. Well, I can tell that you're already growing tired of me. Congratulations, you dear, you're doing fine.
Faron Young made Willie Nelson a successful songwriter. His first hit, Congratulations, was backed by a thing called Hello Walls. We'll talk about that later. Okay, Faron's in Nashville recording on Capitol on the Grand Ole Opry. Which came first, the Grand Ole Opry or the hit records?
Well, I had a semi-hit. Like I told you, I haven't waited too long. And then when I got here, I kept going steady, and it went to #1. It stayed #1 for 42 weeks. But as soon as it got hot, and I was fixing to make some money, I got a telegram that Uncle Sam needs you. I remember Hubert Long and our man, Ken Nelson, came over. I was living at Mom Upchurch's house. Carl Smith and all of us lived over there. Said, you're going to have to go in the service. And I started crying.
I don't blame you.
I mean, I cried like a rat eating a red onion, you know. That, oh, my God. Here I am fixed to start making $300 and $400 a day, which was a lot of money. And got drafted and was making $87.50 a month. But as it ended up, it was a good thing for me to be in the service. I wouldn't swap a day for it. Like they say, I wouldn't do it again for $1 million either.
I wanna live fast, love hard, die young, and leave a beautiful memory. I wanna live fast, love hard, die young, and leave a beautiful memory.
This is Faron Young and an audio biography.
Certainly is. Remember the first time, that magic moment you sang on a Grand Ole Opry?
Biff, I was so dang scared. It's hard to imagine. I went out and I sang, and Hank Williams introduced me.
Okay.
Hank Williams introduced me, and I went out and I sang a song, and the people started clapping, and I went into a run. I don't mean jogging. I ran off the stage, and Ernest Tubb grabbed me. He said, son, go back out there and milk the audience. Milk the audience. That's an encore, son. Go back out and milk the audience. And so I said, and I was raised on a dairy farm. See? So when he said, milk the audience, I had some damn mixed emotions of who am I supposed to milk? And I went back out there and sang another song. When I came off, Hank Williams came over to me. He said, hey, boy, said, you going to make it in this business, boy. You got what it takes, boy. He wouldn't say Faron. Boy. I knew Hank, you know, years later, after him and Audrey broke up, and I was going with a girl named Billie Jean Jones. I brought her up here, and Hank married her later. But we was out at Hank's house one night, and Hank called me in the room, had to put a pistol on me. He said, I don't want no hard feelings with you, boy, but I'm in love with Billie Jean. I said, take her, Hank. Don't shoot me, you know. Said, I don't want to get killed. And 3 weeks later, he married her in Montgomery, Alabama. You know. But
What did you think about Hank Williams?
well, Hank was sober. He was the sweetest guy in the world. If he had 2 or 3 drinks, he was Dr. Jekyll and Hyde. But at that particular night, when he pulled that pistol on me, I didn't know. You know,
He was dead serious then, wasn't
yeah, because Hank was scared of everybody. At that point of his life, it was a couple of years before he died. And he drank 3 or 4 beers. He was drunk because he was taking shots and morphine.
he? Yeah.
Well, see, a lot of people don't realize in the Civil War, we had more dope addicts in the Civil War than we did in the Vietnam War. Oh, yeah. You know, there was over 500,000 American boys killed in the Civil War. There was more Americans killed in our Civil War than we have lost in all the wars combined we fought. World War I, World War II, Spanish-American, British, you name any wars, there was more Americans killed during the Civil War. Well, the only thing they had to give them kids when they cut their legs and arms off was morphine. They become morphine addicts. Hank was that. Hank had fell off a horse and broke his back, and he...
Had 9 ruptured discs.
Right, and he was a morphine addict. He could actually stop and go into a hospital and show a card, and they would give him a shot of morphine. And that's what later killed him, because he had this quack doctor with him that carried morphine. He gave him, and he didn't have about a half a shot, and he gave, him like so many cc's, and it wasn't enough. And he went in the hospital and showed him his card, and they gave him another full load. He didn't tell him he already had some. Hank went back and laid back in the back of that Cadillac and died. It stopped his heart.
Just out of reach of my too empty heart.
Faron Young, one of those 32 #1 hit records you've had in the past 30-something years. A string of hits, touring 250 days a year. You start new businesses. Like, as an example, you created what is arguably the most important country music publication, monthly publication today.
It's the #1 fan journal.
How did it happen?
But I remember the old Judge Hayes, remember on the Grand Ole Opry, you said, "Burp, burp, it's the Grand Ole Opry." He started a thing called Picking and Singing News or something. Well, it went under.
Yeah.
Well, there's another 15 newspapers followed him, and all of them, Charlie Lamb started one, it went under. So I bought into a printing company, so we had our own presses and everything, and we could buy the newsprint pretty cheap. Hired a few people to go to work for me. Dixie Dean, who is now married to Tom T. Hall.
Her name is Dixie Hall now.
Yeah, Dixie Hall. I hired her, and we put out a hell of a newspaper. But it cost me, money every month. I'd have to reach in my pocket and get like $3,000 or $4,000 out of my pocket to pay for the printing and the newsprint and the postage and all that.
Is that called subsidizing?
Yeah, I was subsidizing something but in my heart, Biff, I said, I'm going to see that, because there was Silver Screen magazine. The Rock and Rollers had a magazine. Everybody had a successful magazine except country music. And so when we put the paper out, you could go over to different people and say, "Won't you buy an ad in this paper with us?" And I said, "Oh, ain't nobody reads that paper." But every week they would send us over all their paraphernalia and all their publicity. We'd print it up free for them. Then go back and say, "Now then, we printed that for y'all free. You want to buy some ads?" Nah, nobody reads that paper. And we went through this, and finally the paper got to going. I'll tell you a guy who helped me, Buck Owens. Buck ran a thing in my paper and paid me back then like $3,000. And we ran it for 12 months. It was his pledge to country music. I shall never do anything but a country song. I will only sing country music. I will do this and do this and do this. And he bought it up front. And we put out these issues. Well, Buck must have got 50,000 letters from this. And right after about 6 months later, after he said, "I shall never sing another country song. I will always sing country and nothing but country," he came out with a hit record called "Johnny Be Good." A real country song. But Buck helped us. The money, the $3,000 or $4,000 he paid us, it really helped us on the magazine.
Did we ever say what the name of it was?
Music City News.
Into that
Music
story.
City News. I lost about $100,000
Altogether.
altogether. I never made a dime off of Music City News, but multimedia did. So, see, just before that time, they knew they were fixing to get the network show. They never conferred with me on this situation, even though I was the president of it. They went behind my back, and, you know, they had the Statler brothers and everybody every year on the... They never told me that was coming up, or I wouldn't have sold.
Fascinating.
But that's just a young kid. Like Daddy said, fool around with a smart man, it'll be okay. Daddy was wrong. You
Gotta
fool
be
around with a
smart.
smart guy, gonna get screwed if you ain't smart.
Faron Young, an audio biography. PG for colorful language.
If you got a Cadillac, boy, well, if you ain't loving, well, brother, then you ain't living.
Me telling my life story, big deal.
That's right. Faron Young's a big deal. Faron Young's audio biography with Biff Collie. You got a string of hits. You're touring a bunch of days. You're a big businessman. You got a newspaper. You got the movies. How many days a year were you working?
Back then, I worked 250 days a year. It was a little different. Back then, you know, we carried a car and pulled a trailer with us with all our instrument clothes in it. We had Cadillac limousines. And nowadays, the guys got 2 or 3 buses plus airplanes. You know, we were out working. Top money was at $750 to $1,000. If you made $1,000 a day, that was gold money.
Mm-hmm.
These kids come along now, like name them, Van Shelton or Ricky Skaggs,
Yeah,
guys.
sure.
They go out and they make $50,000. Alabama makes $100,000 a night. There's no way for people like myself or Hank Snow or Webb Pierce, Carl Smith, or Ernest was still alive. And they always put me in with them old-timers, even though I'm like 20 years younger than the biggest part of it. But I'm considered an old-timer, an old legend.
If our life worth living together, then why let it go? A home just can't stand when it has an occasional
Faron Young, entrepreneur, businessman, publisher, singer, songwriter, and now he's in the movies. Talk about Faron Young and the movies. Young Sheriff.
Yeah, well, you know, I did get the Academy Award for making motion pictures. My first picture was called Hidden Guns. And I had a girl that worked in it, played my girlfriend in it, and named Angie Dickerson. That was Angie's first movie. And that was Bruce Bennett and John Carradine. And we got through with the movie. Everybody said, that'll be another high noon. And so they gave me the Academy Award for it. I went out to Hollywood, walked on stage, and they said, here you are, Mr. Young, the Academy Award under one condition. I said, what's that? They said, if you promise never to make another damn movie, we're going to give you this. So that's why I got my Academy Award. My promise never to act again. That's how bad I was.
But you did get the name, the Young Sheriff. What was the movie? What was the name of the movie?
Called,
The Sheriff movie.
called Hidden Guns.
Hidden Gun. And
Yeah.
you played part of a sheriff.
Yeah, they run a contest on that. You know, there was Hank Snow, the singing ranger, and Honest Hob and the Texas Troubadours. Everybody had a name.
Yeah.
So they run a contest, and somebody named me Faron Young, the Young Sheriff, and the band, the Country Deputies.
Yeah. Right.
Faron Young, the Young Sheriff. Now that I'm 57 years old, we've changed it to Faron Young, the singing sheriff. You can't say Young Sheriff
No,
anymore.
no Young Sheriff anymore.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Biff, for inviting me to be your guinea pig on Faron Young.
An audio biography. We'll be back with Faron for another 30 minutes.
Instead of having sweet dreams about you,
Faron Young, Sweet Dreams. Faron's a regular guest on TNN's Nashville Now. You got a new album called Here's to You. You got 32 number one hits, almost 100 top 10 hit records. Faron Young has got to have a house full of awards at home.
Well, yeah, I do, Biff. I have awards for songs that were big hits for me and records of the year and different things like that. I never did win Entertainer of the Year. That stuff wasn't going on back when I was really hot in the business. Entertainer of the Year I never won because that wasn't there. I remember when Willie Nelson won it several years ago, he said, when you people are talking about Entertainers of the Year, you might consider people like Furlin Husky, Little Jimmy Dickens, and Faron Young if you're looking for entertainers. Because they made a lot of guys entertainers of the year that are not entertainers. I love Charlie Pride, you know, but he's not an entertainer. I love Johnny Cash, but he is not an entertainer.
Charlie Pride was another example of people that you were a major factor in their careers. How?
Carried him on the shows, paid him $50 a night. First time I ever worked with him, I flew to San Antonio for free because the people didn't know Charlie was black at the time. And the guy that bought him at a little club down in San Antonio was scared to death. So I went down and said, we got a surprise guest. And I got up and sang. I said, now I got another surprise for you. I want you to meet the guy. And I went back and I told Charlie, when you get out there now, just tell him, said, don't be alarmed by my permanent suntan. Said, I love country music, and I'm not a Black Panther. He walked out there, and he said that, and he started singing. And at the time he got halfway through that song, everybody moved up to the bandstand. And they loved him. They watched him. And when he came off, the girls would come over and want to take pictures with him, you know, and say, well, put your arm. He said, no, ma'am, I can't do that. And them cowboys sitting there with a fist double up. If he had hugged one of them white girls, they'd have knocked his brains out. But he knew better than to do that. He handled himself. I didn't have to tell him. He knew it. He'd picked cotton down in Mississippi. He had worked in the smelters up in Montana. He knew exactly where everything stood. He saw them cowboys stand there, and once he wouldn't put his arm around girls and pull on them and hug on them, they'd walk over and say, Charlie, you one hell of a guy. If he'd have pulled one of them girls over and hugged her or kissed or something, they'd have killed him. And he knew that. You know, his wife, Roseanne, who God had to make special. What a lovely, great woman she is.
Don't go away now. Faron's going to tell you more when we come right back.
How I'd love to be around you when the lonely nights surround you. How I'd love to be alone with you. You try to be my baby just for once, and then, well, maybe I could always be alone with you. And I could always be alone with you.
Well, I can't get over me telling you my story. You mean it's a Faron Young audio biography?
Hello, walls. I things go for you today. We've got to all stick together, or else I'll lose my mind. I've got a feeling she'll be gone for a long time.
Faron Young, the song is called Hello Walls. It's a song that made Willie Nelson a famous songwriter and got him a lot of bull. A 3,000-pound bull, finally, wasn't it? I forgot to ask you about the time you spent in the service, and Gordon Terry, who was one of Nashville's favorite senior citizens. Gordon was your sergeant or something. Tell us about going in the service.
When I got to service, they sent me down to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and put me with a bunch of guys. And finally, for some reason, they knew who I was because I had the hit record out, though. And they came to me and said, we want to talk with you about going into special services. And Eddie Fisher was just fixing to get out of the service at the time. So they took me in and they put a show around me. We had fire eaters and tap dancers and a jazz group and the whole thing. And they carried us over to Atlanta, Georgia. the Fort McPherson. They built a studio there, and we recorded these great big acetate records. And we were on like over 2,000 radio stations a week with that. And my announcer was a guy you'd be familiar with called Leonard Nimoy, who plays Dr. Spock now.
On all the Star Trek
Right.
pictures, yeah.
At the time he was in the service, he was the announcer with us, and before him was Charlie Applewhite,
Yeah.
worked with us on it. And that's what we did. And we put this show together, and we used to travel around to all the different Army bases and play the post theaters and things, and had me and the comedian and the glass eater, and we had a juggler. Just a whole variety show.
Did you have a fiddle player in your outfit?
He had a guy named Bernie Gwatney. He really was. You could call him a fiddle player if you wanted to. It's like, who called that piano player? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, oh, no, later on I got Gordon Terry.
The mule.
Yeah, the mule came in. What a hell of a musician he was, yeah. As after we got rid of Bernie, we found Gordon. We let Bernie, I think we sent Bernie to Korea. And I think he played his fiddle, and it kept the North Koreans way back.
How'd you get Gordon?
I'm not sure if I got Gordon, if Gordon got me. But anyway, we all ended up together in a thing, and we go to different bases. You know, we'd have to draw bedding and things. They put us in some empty barrack.
Wasn't he your sergeant and you were a private? Or?
No, he was a PFC, and so was I.
Oh, I see.
But I went back to the general. I said, you know, we go into these bases and try to draw bedding, and where are they going to put it? And I said, nobody pay no attention to it. I said, you ought to make Gordon a sergeant. He said, okay, son, you're a sergeant.
I met you, my country girl. You didn't have a thing. When you two are dancing and you whisper soft and sweet, I wonder if you'll tell him I bought the shoes on your feet.
I want to tell you something. I've never done this before, a 2-hour radio special.
Faron Young is telling his story and singing his song. We'll be right back to the audio biography. Faron Young, an audio biography with Biff Collie, 32 number one hits, a current 3-record album set of Faron's greatest hits are on the market right now, nearly 100 top 10s, movies, fan club paper, real estate entrepreneur. Did you decide to do it yourself?
Finally, I said one day, I woke up and I said, wait a minute, let me just handle this myself. I'll invest my own damn money. I'll do this my way. So I started buying up property and real estate. I said, that'll work. Starting some publishing companies and all this. Well, I built a building out here in Nashville. I paid $640,000 for the property. It was down in the slum area. And everybody said, what are you doing over at slum, you know? And so I said, well, hide and watch. So I built the Young Executive Building on a 2-lane street, which is now a 4-lane street right next door to an interstate that didn't exist.
And a block from Music Row.
Right. And I sold it 6 years ago. I paid $640 for it. I sold it for $3.2 million. So I have an income of $8,900 a month now for the next 29 years. They've been paying me on it for 6 years. So, you know, I don't have to go out and work if I don't want to work. But if someone told me tomorrow, Faron, you can't work no more, I'd give everything I got away to get back and start over again.
It's 4 in the morning. It's 4 in the morning.
Faron Young's audio biography presented by TNN.